Friday the 13th is next week, and I have a episode of my podcast, as well as a bonus video centered around Jason X coming out. But I wanted to take this time to go back to two previous Friday the 13ths I've already covered, and talk about their Workprint versions, as well as some deleted scenes involved with one of the films. Let's start off with Friday the 13th Part 4, The Final Chapter. As always, if you want a full, detailed breakdown of every single change, check out moviecensorship.com. They have really well-written breakdowns. I'm mostly going to talk about the stuff that I found interesting or stood out to me. Now, let's get into it. They really did trim the fat out of this movie. For some reason, they really tried to build up the romance between Doug and Sarah. There's like a whole scene dedicated to it and a smaller one later. This would be fine if they were the main characters that we were following, but they're not. They just slow down the film. Also slowing down the film is the scene of Mrs. Jarvis walking in on Trisha exercising, as well as the paramedics talking to each other in the beginning. It's just not needed. I understand why they cut all this out. Tommy's more of a jokester in this cut of the film. You might remember in the theatrical cut, he goes to the trunk of their car to look for something to fix their engine, and then it just cuts to the teens swimming. Well, in the Workprint version, it actually plays out a little longer, and we see him scare his sister with one of his many masks.
Tommy, got a couple of these balled up back there.
So then the movie plays the same. They bring that guy Rob to their house, and Tommy shows him around his room. But instead of cutting after he shows him the puppet, the scene goes on longer. He shows Rob this guillotine that he made, and he pranks him too. He makes it look like his hand got cut off, and it scares the hell out of Rob.
Oh, come on, Tommy. Got hot!
Neat trick, huh?
Speaking of Rob, the scene where he hears the kids being killed and then returns to his camp and sees that his shotgun and whatnot has been broken goes on a little longer. He has some kind of radar device, or you don't know what it is right away, but at the end of the scene, you find out that it was a radar device that I guess wasn't turned on. He plays around with that, and then he walks slowly for a really long time. And it's hard to tell because this is a VHS rip from the 80s, and there's a ton of static, but I think in this Workprint, you can hear the director giving him directions, like when to stop and when to walk. Let's listen. And that's all there really is to this cut of the film. I thought for sure we were going to see more gore or that alternate ending that was talked about for years, but it is not in this version. It is on the Blu-ray, however, so if you want to see the gore and the alternate ending, get one of the more recent Blu-rays and it's all there. And if you're not familiar with the alternate ending, originally there was a whole scene between Tommy and Trisha killing Jason and going to the hospital. It cuts to Trisha and Tommy on the couch with Rob's corpse on the floor. They hear some police sirens, and then Trisha goes upstairs and finds her mom in the tub. And then her mom is a zombie, I guess. And then Jason is behind her. And then she wakes up in the hospital. Not really needed, so I understand why they cut it. Plus, I think the last 3 films had the dream ending. I think they were over it at that point. So yeah, nothing too crazy in this cut of the film. Left me wanting more. So let's have more. Let's talk about the Workprint version of Jason Goes to Hell, The Final Friday. Now, you're probably familiar with the unrated cut. It's been out for a really long time. And this does feature scenes from that cut, but it's still a really early edit of the film. It doesn't even have opening titles or credits, which is pretty funny.
It'll be a real joy to count. Gonna be a real joy to count.
So yeah, none of the digital effects are finished in this version of the film, which is actually kind of cool to see because I was always curious about the beams of light hitting the coroner in the beginning. The beams were definitely digital, but according to this Workprint, it looks like he had practical lights underneath his shirt. So I thought that was pretty cool. And it's also really funny when Jessica gets the magic dagger at the end. Not having the effect there makes it real laughable.
I do. I do.
In this version, we get to learn a little bit more about Duke. Apparently, he trains mercenaries. And in this version, we get to hear him talk about another killer that he assassinated.
How long has it been since your last assignment?
Well, I gutted the Arizona Slasher about 3 years ago.
And you haven't accepted an assignment since?
No one's been desperate enough to hire me.
So the entire 9 or 10 minute sequence of Steven picking up the campers and then dropping them off, them having sex and getting killed by Jason, is completely absent from this version of the film. I'm guessing in post, and I think I read this before, they felt there wasn't enough Friday the 13th, like classic Friday the 13th stuff in the film. So they added in this whole minor subplot about the teens having sex in the woods. And I think it was just a way to get more nudity and some more kills earlier in the film. But yeah, it is completely gone from this version of the film. In the work print, Diana, Jason's sister, is actually on the phone with the sheriff, her boyfriend. He's talking about how much he loves her and how they're going to go on vacation with her or whatever. And it's also funny to watch this because obviously they never got around to doing the ADR, so you just hear the guy off camera saying the lines in a completely different voice.
That's on my vacation. We get married then, we'll have 2 weeks in Hawaii. I love you, Diana.
I'm guessing when they were editing the film, they realized that Jessica should be a more important part of the film, and they should try to introduce her earlier. So they shot new scenes and recorded new dialogue where now it's Jessica calling her mom. And they worked it into the previous scene with Diana talking to her boyfriend. And it actually works really, really well. Although Diana saying, "I love you, baby," has a completely different context in both versions.
I love you, Diana. And I'm sorry I waited this long.
Oh, God, Ed. I love you too, baby. Can you tell him?
I'll tell him.
I love you, Mom.
I love you too, baby.
There's a whole scene that establishes earlier that Diana's corpse was missing from the morgue, and Duke is believed to be the one who did it. The character Vicky, who watches Jessica's baby, has a way bigger part. We see her talking to her boyfriend, who then gets killed after she leaves. When Campbell is walking through the Voorhees house talking on the phone, he has different dialogue. He mentions that he knows more of Jessica's family history. It's also suggested in this version he stole the corpse from the morgue. I'm guessing it wasn't clear enough to audiences, so they reshot it to make it more clear.
Oh, you heard about that, did you? Yeah, I thought it was a nice touch, too. Body of slain Voorhees woman stolen from morgue. Well, last night, I stole Diana's body, and I hid it here in the closet. The scene with Steven and Jessica in the car goes on a little bit longer, and I actually like this. It explains the whole origin of the baby and their breakup a little bit more, because I was always kind of confused what happened between them in the final cut of the film. So having more of an explanation here makes a lot more sense.
Why didn't you tell me about the baby?
I did. I told you I was pregnant, and you said you weren't ready to be a father.
But then you lied to me. You told me you had a miscarriage.
Maybe you weren't ready to be a father, but I was ready to be a mother. I was just trying to do what I thought was best for both of us.
Now, if you've seen this wonderful film before or watched our review, you would know that towards the end, Jason turns into a demon worm, and then he crawls up his dead sister's vag. That's a real thing that happens. I mentioned in the episode where we reviewed this that there was a additional demon. So the demon worm comes out of the other cop, and it's a tiny baby demon worm.
Because he was like mid-transformation and they fucked it up. Because he was gonna like puke it like Vigo style.
By the way, there's a full-grown version of that worm that you can look up pictures for, but it never made it into the film.
Oh, really?
Really?
Yeah. And in this cut, I finally got to see those scenes. And the demon looks pretty cool. You can't really tell because of the VHS footage. It's pretty cool. The Duke actually fights him and throws him in the basement. And we hear the sound of it using Diana's body to transform. It's left up to the imagination what's happening. I guess they decided once they cut the big demon to say the hell with imagination and actually film the little demon worm going up her vag. So the ending was going to have Jessica stab Jason like she does in the final cut, but Steven was going to be the one who delivered the killing blow. This kind of contradicts the whole like only a Voorhees can kill a Voorhees thing that was established. So they reshot it to make Jessica the one who finally does Jason in. And kudos to them for filming a whole new close-up of her boot kicking the dagger. Because they could have taken the lazy way out and just used Steven's kick in the close-up. It goes by so fast, you probably wouldn't have noticed. And that's what I assumed was happening until I took a closer look at the footage. But yeah, they went the extra mile to make sure it was perfect. Because when I think of perfection, I think of Jason Goes to Hell: The Final Friday. Jason being pulled to hell goes on way longer. We see even bigger rubber hands grab him, and we actually get to see some demons coming out and clawing on his head and whatnot. I'm not sure why such a big moment was trimmed down so much in the final cut. I'm guessing once they added the 10 minutes of the teens in the woods that amounted to nothing, they decided they had to trim stuff from other scenes. I would have left this all intact, even though some of it looks kind of ridiculous. So there you are, the work prints for the final chapter and the final Friday. If you like this video, check out my Hellraiser Bloodline work print review. It's pretty good. It's pretty interesting. Come back Monday where we're going to talk about Jason X, and return later that week where I'll be talking about a different Jason X thing. What am I talking about? You'll just have to tune in and find out. And the best way to do that is to subscribe. Make sure to like and share this video. And if you become a fan of this channel and the podcast, check out our Patreon for more stuff. Bye!
Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Check out our other videos and Patreon page.